Hello, I'm Jim Shields, your town moderator, and this is the preview we broadcast on ELCAT to indicate the matters that are going to be brought before the special town meeting, which is now scheduled for Monday, October 27th at 7 o'clock at the high school. We have a quorum requirement of 100, so we certainly encourage your attendance. There is a fairly short warrant, so I suspect the meeting will go expeditiously. It's your opportunity to act as a legislator, and it's your opportunity to participate in the oldest form of democracy in the country, so I certainly urge your attendance. The first 4 articles on the warrant are sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, and here to explain those articles is Paul Federici, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and also with us is Eric Madison, who is the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which has input on matters involving the expenditure of funds, and these articles do contemplate some monies being spent. So, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 1 has to do with, as many people know, in town we have certain problems with properties who are either abandoned or owned by banks and are vacant at the time, and trying to clean up those properties to the satisfaction of the neighbors, because they tend to get into disrepair, and that presents a problem from a health standpoint with vermin and the like, presenting themselves in these properties when they get overgrown. So Selectman Gorman actually was the one who thought up this idea to set aside a source of money to be able to hire cleanup crews, in effect, landscapers, et cetera, to take care of these abandoned properties, bill the properties accordingly for the work, and if the bills are not paid, have them added as a tax lien to their property. Our board, although we did vote to include these articles in the warrant, we have not voted formally to present them yet, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and I believe 9. Article 1, although we think it's a good idea, in discussions with the Appropriations Committee that I had last week, we're thinking that it might be a better idea to bring this back in the spring, in the May town meeting, in the regular town meeting, and that way it'll give us a little more time to expand on it and get a little more detail.
Thank you. Did you have any comments on the funding of it?
Yeah, currently the Town of East Long Meadows free cash has not yet been certified by the Commonwealth, meaning we have no revenue source of undesignated funds to fund any dollar articles at the special town meeting with, nor do we anticipate that certification to occur before the scheduled town meeting. So at present, there really is no way to fund any dollar articles. However, I will say that both Articles 1 and 2, generally the Appropriations Committee is supportive of what the Board of Selectmen is trying to accomplish, and we do look forward to working with them to bring a more comprehensive and meaningful articles on both these matters in the spring town meeting.
Okay. What about Article 2?
Article 2 has to do with our animal control officer, and depending on whether you have a pet or not, or you watch our meetings, you may not be aware that the two animal control officers that we have now are doing a tremendous job. They've, for lack of a better term, they've taken that position into the 21st century. We've gone from part-time people to 2 people who are dedicated to the job, especially Tom O'Connor, our main animal control officer, and he has gone out and he's licensed a tremendous amount of previously unlicensed dogs. They have rabies clinics, they have other things going on. He's in contact with veterinarians. He's done such a good job. He's increased the income of the animal control department, if you will, by, I believe, $20,000, and it's expected to be $30,000 within the next year. So what this article is looking for is these folks work on a stipend of $50 a day to be on call effectively 24 hours a day. They're looking to boost that to $75. We think it's a good idea. We think they're showing that they're doing a tremendous job. They're presenting increased revenue to the town, increased services. Their animal control calls by the police department have dropped by, I believe, 1/3 because the animal control officers are on duty full time. And like I said, they're just looking to be put more in place with other towns as far as animal control, their animal control officers. And once again, in discussion with the Appropriations Committee, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe they were in favor of this, but once again, it looked like it would be better presented with the town annual meeting in May rather than the special town meeting.
Okay. Is there any opportunity, perhaps at the annual meeting, would this be something where the fees that are collected could be used as a funding source, sort of a revolving fund type of approach? Is that something that's possible?
That is sort of what we've considered, and also giving us till May will get us through the budgetary process, and we can show the increase in revenue and, you know, show the need for this revolving type of fund to you know, to sort of make the animal control officers whole, and you know, I mean, they love their job, but I'm sure they'd love it if they were getting paid more accordingly with the market.
Any additional comments, Eric?
No, I would just echo the Board of Selectmen have done a great job of supplying the Appropriations Committee with certainly ample data to support this this article. With that said, it has been the position of the Appropriations Committee that increases in stipend salaries and those sort of things really need to be considered as part of the entire budget process, so the full impact can be evaluated before a recommendation is made. For that reason, we would rather see this at the spring town meeting versus at the fall town meeting.
Okay.
And if I may add before you finish, as you said, we have, you know, we did present you with some information, and I think it'd be a good idea, you know, be it that we bring it into the May meeting, that we can get that information out to the public in one form or another, so they can actually see with the increases and you know, what's been done in the last 3 or 4 years.
All right, and Article 3?
Article 3 and 4, we're taking no action on. Do you want me to explain what they were, or do you?
You might just indicate.
Okay, Article 3 was originally, there was a contract, there was going to be to fund the contract of the benefits administrator. However, we had already contracted with her earlier in the year, and that was part of the current budget, so there was no need for that additional warrant item. In Article 4, we have, as some of you may know, we have a new town accountant, and she came in at a very slightly increased salary from the former town accountant. I believe it was $1,073 difference. And we originally were going to go to the town for a warrant item to request that $1,073, but because of circumstances of the timing of our former accountant leaving and our new accountant coming, there was enough money in the budget to cover that, so we determined with the Appropriations Committee that we didn't need to bring this warrant item to town meeting.
So no action will be taken or proposed on either of those 2 articles?
Correct.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Articles 5, 6, and 7 are all sponsored by the Community Preservation Committee. And they are interesting in that they all seek to transfer funds back into the main accounts from which they were appropriated at prior town meetings. Here to explain those articles is George Kingston, a member of that committee. George.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, Article 5, 6, and 7 are all basically housekeeping articles. These are for projects that either were canceled and never done, or for projects that were under budget. They got the project done for less than was appropriated. And we've been advised by town council that the proper thing to do is to reappropriate them back into the Community Preservation Fund. This basically frees up these dollars which have been committed to the projects to be used for other things. Article 5 relates specifically to the Pine Knoll pool. We don't have a firm number on that yet, but we think that the number will be around $25,000, and we will have that on the floor. This is basically, it came in under budget, which we're very happy about. Article 6 is the same thing for a number of things that were voted for the historical preservation. 2 of them in particular, moving the depot never happened, and the depot is now in private hands, so we can't spend that money. The Norcross House had asked for money to get put on the National Register. They reconsidered that and withdrew the request after it was voted. So, and the others were under spending. Article 7 is the same thing for senior housing. In general, for senior housing, we were trying to make sure they had enough money to get the projects done. They got them done. A number of them were under budget, and therefore there's money to come back into the fund.
So terrific. So essentially they're being taken from one pocket and put back in the other pocket, the big pocket, from which these disbursements can be made for future projects.
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you. Article 8 on the warrant has been sponsored by the school committee, and it relates to a change in the terms of the members of the school committee. And here to explain and the rationale for the request for that change are Gordon Smith, the superintendent of schools, and Bill Fonseca, a member of the school committee. Gentlemen.
Good evening. The reason I thought of this and presented it to the school committee, there were several reasons. And to start with, in April, right after the town election, our budget and capital plan are not completely approved, formulated. We're still working on it. As the time continues to progress between April and May town meeting, we are still meeting with the Appropriations Committee. New members would have a great deal of difficulty, I feel, getting up to speed with the complexity of our budget as well as our capital plan. In June, we are still collecting data for our SMART goals, which we need to analyze and ensure that the district has met the SMART goals that are presented to us in October. The third and probably most important reason for this change is we do the superintendent's summative evaluation at the end of June by his contract. A new member would have a great deal of difficulty getting up to speed on all of, Gordon presents us with his goals in October. A new member wouldn't know those goals. We can cram with this new member, but we don't feel that it would be fair for a new member to take on all of this knowledge in a short period of time and be able to make decisions that would be consistent with what the work we're doing.
Basically, the start date would be changed if this were actually to pass. So the start date for a new school committee member would be the start of the fiscal year, July 1st. So that, just as Mr. Fonseca was saying, a lot of the work that we've done for the entire school year really comes into finalization in the months of April, May, and June. And so bringing a new member on board late April puts them almost at a disadvantage because they haven't had the previous months of preparation, planning, and discussion to make a lot of key decisions in late April, May, and June as we close out a school year.
That certainly makes sense. Do other communities in the area have a similar start date, do you know?
At this time, through some research, Hamden-Wilbraham is considering the same thing. Wilbraham has passed it at their town meeting. They had a special town meeting in the spring, early in the spring, and they passed it. Hamden has not voted on it yet, but it did pass in Wilbraham. Mm-hmm. And they are using the same rationales that we are giving this evening because of the timing of everything that they do over there as well.
Well, I know the Board of Selectmen has an article with a similar, seeking similar results in terms of the start date for members of that board, and I assume for similar reasons. Certainly insofar as Appropriations Committee issues and the like are concerned, and the budget issues, there still could be a lot of work done after the election, before the town meeting, and before July 1st, where it would be advantageous to have the institutional history of the member who's leaving the board remain on the board as long as possible. So.
Yeah, and that's, again, these are the primary reasons that I did discuss this with the entire committee. The committee was in favor of it once I presented all the rationales that I explained here tonight.
Very good. Well, that's Article 8 on the warrant. Article 9 is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, and similar to Article 8, it has to do with a request to change the start date for members of the board once they get elected. And here to explain Article 9 is Angie Thorpe from the Board of Selectmen.
Hi, thank you. This article is primarily extremely similar to Article 8, if not exactly the same. And the reason is to change the term to start on July 1st, as opposed to in April. The reason is when in April we're right in the budgetary process and getting ready for the May meeting, and then you get a new person that comes in and it's kind of hard to bring them to speed. So to be efficient, let the current board finish their process, and that whoever it is would finish their term on June 30th, and then the new person would start on July 1st, which is the fiscal year.
That certainly makes sense. As I asked the school committee members, Do other towns, are you aware of any other towns in the area?
My understanding is that Hamden is doing it currently, and it just makes sense for us and anybody else who would like to follow that, who has the same process that we have with the elections being in April.
Right. Would you envision now that, assuming that these two Articles 8 and 9 pass, would you expect that other elected boards might opt to do the same thing and have, so that there's consistency?
I would hope that they would. I know that with our budget process, which I'm not saying that anybody else is not as involved, but you know, we're handling quite a bit of the town's finances under the Board of Selectmen, and also the school committee is a big part of the budget process. And we want to make sure we give it all the time and attention that it needs. So by extending that out, it gives the foundation, the team that is the foundation who has started it and developed it, to finish it out and see it through. And I think that's what's best for our town.
Very good. Well, that's Article 9. Articles 10 and 11 are sponsored by the Board of Public Works. Each relate to an easement, a property right being sought by National Grid. And here to explain those articles is Tom Wilson, the chair of the Board of Public Works. Tom.
Thank you, Jim. Article 10 is an electrical upgrade to Meadowbrook School, and it's simply to allow the National Grid to go in and out of that area to maintain anything, and now or in the future that may happen to those wires, and that's basically all that is. Article 11 is referring to a new substation that they put in at the end of behind a salt shed, and they're doing some electrical upgrades in that substation to give us a more reliable power grid. And they right now they have a current easement, but it's for overhead power only, and they're going to need to run some underground electrical service in the same area of where they have an overhead easement, and that's going to give us a more reliable power grid. And this area is, if you go into the DPW yard, right behind the salt shed.
Okay, so this is basically to give the utility company the rights to the property there to put their power lines.
Right. Currently, they have an overhead easement with no ability to put some underground cables, which they need to do.
Okay. And since this involves a transfer of property rights, a 2/3 vote will be required on each of the articles, on the motions made under each of these two articles. Article 12 is a zoning issue brought forward by the Planning Board having to do with the sign bylaw. And here back again is George Kingston, a member of the Planning Board, who will explain Article 12.
Now, Article 12 is basically a rewrite of Section 5.8 of the zoning bylaw. It really changes nothing in the zoning bylaw. The size of signs that are allowed, the types of signs that are allowed are the same as what's in the current bylaw. But we felt the rewrite was necessary to clarify and make it easier to use. As an example, under the current bylaw, all of the subsections start out, no accessory or non-accessory sign shall be permitted in a XYZ district except. And that's kind of confusing because why not just say no sign or any sign? Well, now they all start out, signs shall only be permitted in an XYZ district subject to the following conditions. The conditions are essentially the same. Some of them have been rewritten to make them more clear. It's a very long article, we understand that, but that's because signage is different for every district in every zoning district in town, and has to be spelled out differently for every zoning district in town. But it really doesn't change the size or number that's allowed in any district. It's the same as it was before.
Okay. As a proposed change to the zoning bylaw, the vote on the motion for this article will require a 2/3 vote. Articles 13 and 14 were each citizens' petitions requesting that the town take as, for a public way, as a road, 2 different streets that have been constructed in the town. Both the Planning Board and the Board of Public Works has recommended approval, and here to explain a little bit more about that is Tom Wilson, the chair of the Board of Public Works.
Both Article 13, which is Betterly Lane, and Article 14, which is Wisteria Lane, have all been constructed and inspected to the DPW standards and are fully acceptable. And I believe all the houses have been built out, and there might be one or two that haven't sold yet, but the houses are already constructed. And I would assume they'd be occupied shortly. But everything has been constructed and inspected to our standard.
And again, the planning board has also approved or recommended approval of the motions made under each of these. As was the case with one of the earlier articles, since this involves essentially a taking of real estate, a 2/3 vote will be required on each of the motions made under these two articles. So there you have it. We have 14 articles on the warrant, and as we've heard, several of the articles are not going to be acted upon. So I'm anticipating that the meeting should go very expeditiously. It's important that you show up. As I said at the beginning, we have a quorum requirement of 100 people. I would like to start the meeting as close to 7 o'clock as possible and move the thing through so you can be home as early as possible thereafter. So please, please show up at the high school on Monday, October 27th at 7 p.m., and I hope to see you there. Thank you.